and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello, everyone. This is Martin Willis, your host, and we have a great show coming up for you this evening with our guest, a good friend of mine out in the Chicago area, Sam Maranto. You may remember him as Sam helped out here between the UFO newscasters, and he'll be coming up after Alejandro Rojas from Open Minds Radio is going to be telling us about the latest UFO events. We have some new T-shirts available on our website, and they're pretty awesome. They have a great image, UFO crash site by James Nathan. He has given us the rights to use that image. And so for $25 right on our website, you can buy a T-shirt, all different sizes, free shipping. We'll have to work out European shipping and around the world. I don't know what the cost will be for that, but we'll figure that out. Check it out on Podcast UFO. Well, what better place does anyone have to complain but on their own podcast? And last week, I had moved our domain, podcastufo.com, to a dedicated server because of traffic. And if you're a subscriber through Joyride, that will not affect you in any way. It didn't affect you last week. But if you're a regular listener on our website or on iTunes, Stitcher, and all that, I do apologize. The show just went up on Monday. Last Wednesday after the last podcast, I couldn't upload the podcast because of the new server settings. And I spent most of the night with the HostGator trying to figure that out. And it never got fixed, and I spent at least 10 hours with our customer service and tech over the last week and finally got fixed on Monday. I'm still having a lot of syntax errors, name server errors, and all that stuff, but I think it will be okay for now. I was accidentally hung up on 5 times by HostGator support. And each time it went into a survey asking if I would recommend HostGator to a friend. Let me just say this: I wouldn't want to recommend them to an enemy at this point. I'm really upset with this whole situation. Hopefully, it'll be ironed out and the show will get straightened out. And just one more thing before we bring Alejandro on: if you want to subscribe to hear the second hour as a podcast, go to getjoyride.com/podcastufo. The link is right on our website as well. Subscribers pay $1 a month or more to access the full 2-hour show, and that includes a private link you can use for iTunes, on your iPhone, and all kinds of media players. And if you have any questions or problems, just email me at martin@podcastufo.com. And by the way, my email is not quite straightened out. It's almost fixed. I am getting some of the emails. And so hopefully all will be straightened out, and that's enough complaining for me, but boy, does it feel good. Alejandro, was that too much?
No.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I'm not a real Debbie Downer?
No, I'm not bummed
Okay,
at all
good.
by that. Unfortunately, good customer service is hard to come by.
Yeah. It's been something else. But anyway, hopefully it'll be all set. And let's talk about what's going on out there. You're getting busy and ready for the upcoming UFO Congress. I'm making arrangements to be out there. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, so am I. I'm really excited. I think I've said this before. I just love, these people being able to share their information, people that you've interviewed. And, I think it's hit or miss always, just like when you have someone on you don't know. I think it's a good thing to do, someone who does some work, but you're not familiar with them or how well they're able to articulate their work. But there's so many times where you're pleasantly surprised, and I love just featuring the great hard work by so many people out there, that are really into this topic and take it very seriously. So it's always really exciting. We always like to present people that aren't out there on the circuit. I think it's unfortunate that most of the conferences have the same people because they're just so fearful of having someone different. Mm-hmm. So I love doing that. And often, the speakers that we have end up being the new people on the circuit, bringing in new blood. I think maybe some of the people who are regular on the circuit maybe get frustrated by that. But, it's fair and it's good. And some of them who are genuine, researchers and love the field are happy to have new blood coming in and sharing new information and new perspectives. So I'm extremely excited mainly to share the information with people, and we have a lot of great speakers.
Yeah, I've always tried to get unique and new speakers on this show. And, sometimes, I watch the downloads. Sometimes the downloads aren't that popular, but still, I just think it is good to shine a new light on, the subject when you find someone new.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I found, and you probably do too, we've got kind of an audience who's going to be there no matter what, and that's what's great. They'll listen. Maybe they won't like it, and they'll say that, and you'll have a little bit of a less listeners, and maybe get some feedback. But what's great is often they'll still give it a chance because they like listening to the show, and then they're happily surprised by how great someone is or the great information that they have, and you're introducing someone new to people, and that's awesome.
Well, I got to tell you, ever since I've been on your show way back, I think it was a year and a half ago, my show has instantly grew one third for downloads right after that. And so I think we share a lot of the same listeners. Matter of fact, someone emailed me the other day. They said they're kind of listening to the same UFO news twice, but they don't care.
So. That is funny. And it's with a different straight guy, because you're my straight guy on this, and Jason is on our show. So that means it's different jokes, a little slightly different sense of humor, but and different takes on because then you'll have interesting questions regarding the news that of course we wouldn't have on our show. So it's still good, and I agree with you. I think we have a similar sensibility to this. We agree so much on and have similar perspectives on the whole thing.
Righto. So what is going on this week? Has it been a busy week?
It's been an interesting week. It has been somewhat busy, and it's been a real weird, interesting week, which is good. So yeah, I have a couple sightings and then a kind of a new cool story, and that has to do with John Greenwald. So, but something completely different than what's been going on here.
Okay.
But yeah, few stories here. So the first one I want to talk about is a UFO sighting outside of Roswell, New Mexico. So this is exciting. This was December 27th. This was written up by Roger Marsh, who is the director of communications for MUFON, who writes about MUFON stories or sightings on our website. And this one took place December 27th. It was a guy driving in an RV. I guess he's driving across country. I don't think he gave details there. But he's outside of town, and he sees something, 50, 60 feet off the ground. And he's wondering what the heck this thing is. Eventually, he thought then it was a large metal bar, but as he got closer, he said he could tell it was a large triangle. It moved down to about 25 feet off the ground, and it was there for a while him and his wife were looking, or his sister was sitting back there looking at this UFO, wondering what the hell this is. He finally realized, oh man, I've got my camera right over here. He goes to grab the camera, and it's gone. So, yeah, really interesting sighting right outside of Roswell.
Isn't this like 2 weeks in a row someone that happened to? No, the other guy got pictures, but when he put gas in his car, the thing took off or something.
Yeah, exactly. He got a picture, but the object was really far off, and so you couldn't really make much out of the picture. But, yeah, he felt that was a triangular-shaped object as well. So it does seem, and we've got some more stories, it does seem like there's a lot of triangular UFO sightings out these days.
It does. I think the saucer went out of style, went out of fashion. And the new model, the 2015, in our time, model is the triangle.
Yeah. And, a lot of people say, no, those are government. But, it's been, in my experience, because I've done a lot of research here, these ideas that we're flying these triangles that can hover and then move off quickly, there's no evidence that we are creating something like this. There's this kind of urban legend of something called the TR-3B. But there was a TR-3A that was a prototype kind of ship, and that's been known. You can go look that up. But there is no TR-3B that's known about, and there has been no evidence that something like that's been developed. So these are unexplained objects, these triangular UFOs. We don't know where they come from.
Yeah. So what else is happening?
Yeah, and a location of another big UFO case, that's the Rendlesham Forest. There's a video that was posted to YouTube of these 3 balls of lights. They kind of flash. There's a military helicopter following these 3 balls of lights around, and kind of a weird video. However, a lot of people are very skeptical about this video. It's one of these things where it's posted on YouTube on an account that was just created. So it seems like this account was just created only to post this video, and a lot of people are feeling like, a lot of researchers are feeling like this could be in preparation for a new movie coming out called the UFO Rendlesham Incident, and this is a fiction movie about the Rendlesham Forest, and they even say it's not about the original things, but it's about UFO and aliens chasing people on the forest or something. And so a lot of people feel this is probably a publicity thing for that upcoming movie.
Wow. Was there also a sighting in Phoenix? Phoenix Lights?
Well,
no.
There was that whole publicity thing recently.
Oh, that's right.
It's funny you say that because yeah, remember not too long ago this David Collins guy, and we called, he tweeted us trying to convince us otherwise. But there was a story that came out recently. They wrote a press release about this movie coming out, and they even said, we've been doing some viral stuff to try to get this movie out there for marketing, and we're going to be doing some more. And it confirmed that was some marketing for their movie. So, yeah, they're going to be doing more, so we're going to have to be on the lookout for that.
For sure. So what else is happening?
So the final story, and this is really cool, the Black Vault, we most recently talked about that with the Blue Book Files, but John Greenwald, who runs this, they have something else that they got going on here. The Black Vault is helping to sponsor a UFO detector software. So this software, assuming it works, is really cool. So it's created by these people called Project CE. The CE stands for Connecting Evidence. They want to remain, again, anonymous in the creation of this. But this is a program you can download and install on your computer. And then what it'll do is you take your USB webcam, you put it out your window, and this thing will monitor the webcam. And whenever something flies across the screen, it will analyze it to find out if it's like a bird or a plane. If it doesn't know what it is, it'll record the video of this thing so you can look at it later. So, yeah, pretty cool. So what they're doing with this software, too, is they want you to submit, like if it records an object, and you're like, well, that's obviously a bird. You can submit a picture of that object to the developers so they can adjust the software so it's more and more accurate, so it doesn't get what they call false positives. So it doesn't record birds and mundane things, but it only captures videos of UFOs. It records in high definition, and it's a free download. So
I was just going to ask you how much it was.
Yeah, absolutely free. Yep.
Wow.
So really cool. So this is exciting, especially if it works. Hopefully it may help people get a lot more really good UFO videos. So it can record day, night. You can have this thing running all day and night. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hook up a webcam and do this at home and have it just monitoring above my apartment complex and see what I can get. But real easy to use. I've got some screenshots here. I have links to the Project CE site, but John Greenwald has a support site on the Black Vault for this that has some really good instructions. And he also has a forum, because part of this is they want to create a community where people are submitting their videos. Everybody's kind of analyzing the videos as a community, and then also giving feedback, asking questions, so we can together kind of investigate and find some good videos.
Awesome. I wonder if this thing will record a flying squirrel if it went across. I bet it would.
It probably would, but it wouldn't. Hopefully it wouldn't save the video, because it's not a UFO. That would be an identified flying. That would be an IFS, an identified flying squirrel.
I'm only saying this because I'm squirrel infested up here in the mountain.
I like the squirrels. Squirrels are fun.
All right. Thanks a lot. And
soon.
Stay tuned after this tune by Bruce Rainier. And this is Sam Maranto coming up. Welcome back, Sam.
Wow. That was interesting.
The music?
Yeah. And the conversation with Alejandro.
Yes, always. It's a pleasure having him on. And it's a pleasure having you back. For those who have not heard Sam before, if you're a new listener, Sam helped out for a while on the show. He's been a guest a couple of times and always has a lot of fascinating things to say, a lot of fun. I consider him a good friend. And I'm glad you're doing well. What's going on in the Midwest?
Well, I tell you what, if the old boy could just stay on his 2 feet, he'd be doing better. I tell you, on Tuesdays, my new routine is to schedule myself to fall. I fell yesterday on ice. I did this little thing like, I don't know, it was kind of weird. And it's a miracle I didn't break a shoulder in the process, but sure enough, black ice got me. Last week, did a similar thing without the ice. Somehow I forgot to, remember there was 18 inches of stairs between my next step and took a spill there. But I tell you, the winter has been unusually peaceful for the most part, and so have the reports. So the reports that have been coming in, none of which have fallen into our lap, being very gracefully unique and just so stunning that we have to run out and leave our mucklucks in the closet because they're so interesting. But we are getting some reports, many of them having to do with, of course, lights in the sky. And, the thing is, the notorious lights in the sky, anything at a distance could seem peculiar, depending on your perspective and, of course, your bias. The other thing that we get is, of course, the complete opposite, that it's mundane. That, of course, just because it's out there and it does seem unusual, and it is moving unusual, well, it's just something very prosaic. And that, the thing is, it doesn't hurt to file a report, especially if we find out that somebody closer noticed something a little more unusual because of their perspective. And then that other case can add, or I should say report, because it doesn't really become a case until it's investigated. That report adds a little more credence, possibly, to the better perspective or observation. So folks out there that may be hesitant to file a report, if there's some merit that they feel it's worthwhile, go to MUFON.com, file a report, and you're going to get a call back, and either way you'll get some idea of what you did not see or what you may have seen.
Sam, the last show I announced that, I quietly said that I've been hesitant to talk about second sighting because I feel like, I've talked many times about the sighting I had, but I was feeling like if I mentioned that I saw something else unusual, that it would hurt my cred a little bit. But I got, I think, about 4 or 5 emails of people saying, "Go ahead, tell me what did you see?" So I'm just going to say it, and it could be, as you're saying, could be something totally prosaic, something, but it was kind of hard to explain. I was walking in a golf course at night. I was living on a golf course about a year ago. Yes, a year ago. And so I was out at night, and I saw what I thought was, it looked like the size of like a star moving. And I thought, well, it's a big satellite. And then I thought, wow, it's a real big satellite. And but it was moving like one. And so I was thinking, well, this thing's so big, it's got to be the International Space Station or something. I just couldn't figure out what it was. And then all of a sudden, it did these couple of weird maneuvers. And I go, oh, my God, I'm not really seeing this, am I? And so I took out my iPhone I had at the time and filmed it. And I looked at, when I got home, you could just barely see this little line, moving. But you couldn't tell whether it was a camera shake or, it was actually moving in the sky. So that was, so I won't get any more email. I don't think about that. I'm not going to say it was unidentified to me, but I don't know what it was. But it was nothing like the first sighting I had, or possibly the only real sighting I had.
Did you talk about that much? Because that is a good sighting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I brought that up. For the listener who hasn't heard, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but basically I was in a hot tub, and yes, I got teased about that. Was not drinking at the time, and this perfectly shaped disc with a little bluish silver tint came right over me. And the thing that I had never heard about or known about at the time was it made absolutely no sound. And to me, that was the most baffling. I kept waiting to hear something. And then it took off on a right angle toward Monterey. I was in Carmel Valley, California. It took off toward Monterey, and I called the police department, and I was sort of ridiculed about it and put on hold for 20 minutes and hung up. So that's basically the whole ordeal. But whatever it was, it certainly was nothing that I could ever call that was something earthly. It would be, if it was, then it's being kept totally secret from us out there.
Well, I had a call once. I had a conversation with a lady who was a secretary and pertaining to some business I was working on at that time. And she was telling me about an experience she had I'm trying to think of where it was. It was Malibu. And it was I was near the coast, between 2 mountains or whatever in that vicinity. And they decided to have a fire in the evening. They built this fire, and they just get it started. And then it was some ways, off from the cabin that belonged to some friends of theirs. Not necessarily that far, but, within close walking distance. They just started, and all of a sudden, they seen these two points of light appearing at intervals, let's say almost parallel, over the peaks of the 2 mountains on each side of them. And they watched it, and what had happened is they started to head towards each other, to becoming directly overhead, And when they became directly overhead, while they were moving up, they began to hear the coyotes yiping and yelling and carrying on. Then all of a sudden, as this progression of these two lights start to come together, there was this buzzing of, like, they said it was as if they were being swarmed by insects or bees. And I've heard this many a time in close encounters or being at very close, a close proximity to a object such as a UFO, a genuine UFO. And it's progressing and progressing. Then all of a sudden, when they come together, directly overhead there's this humongous beam of light that just shines down, and it's just wow. And all of a sudden, they feel they were knocked out, wake up, look at each other, and running out of the house is the woman who owned the place, and she goes, "What was that? What happened? What happened?" And they all look at her, and they look down, and the fire that they had just started, this huge, bonfire, was nothing but ashes and cinder.
So they had the missing time. That's very much like the Allagash incident.
Yes, very much. In fact, when she was telling me that, I was thinking of the very same case. And they swore to each other, Martin, that they would never tell anybody about this. And how I befriend her to at least gain her confidence into talking about this was the week prior. I have nocturnal cognition, and for a series of nights, it was really being active on unusual things. And usually I would wake up and I would say a few words, Sam's, gibberish in the morning, but they were all relevant to what transpired further on in the day. And I woke up that day and I said, "Red cat." And Julie's looking at me and she's like, "Red cat?" I go, "I don't know what it is, but it's something. It has something to do with something." So this very same person, mind you, now this is like a week or two earlier, we start talking, and she was a secretary, so she was the person I had to go through to talk to. I had a business relationship with, and so we got to talk quite a bit, and we started talking, all sorts of things. And I says, "Well, what did you do this weekend?" She goes, "You'd never guess what happened to me. I was by my friend's house, and her cat had kittens, and they were all just so beautiful, but one in particular was just so unusual. You never guess what color it was." Oh. And I go, "Red." And all of a sudden there was this lull, and she goes, "How did you know that?"
Wow.
And from that point on, we started talking about unusual experiences, paranormal experiences, or experiences working at a haunted hotel up on, I believe it was in Oregon, and it was interesting to hear about it. And then soon later, I think it was no more than 6 months ago, I actually seen something on one of the shows pertaining to the very location she was at, and she was telling me about. It was very interesting.
So this woman eventually told you about this amazing sighting you were just talking about?
Yes, and that was the last time I got to speak to her. But the way she built it up, and you could tell she was actually afraid to talk about it, but she gave it in such details that, when somebody describes something, and this, I think, goes back to the value of the oral tradition. It's so inbred into us. I think it's part of our physiology more so than our psychology. Who knows? But, I think this goes way back to sitting around the campfire and telling stories. And when she's painting this picture with her beautiful words, I get this whole image and the sound. I know the sound of what she was talking about. And I can relate to this, the sound of the swarming sound of bees or insects around here and the yiping of coyotes. These are things I can relate to. And in the background, hearing the crackling of the fire. Then all of a sudden, to this apex, there's these two adjoining lights and an instant beam, and I could just feel the energy because I've been there. I know what she's talking about, and I know many people out there listening to us right now can relate to it, if not so in a personal experience, but maybe somebody they know.
Yeah, wow. Well, I don't remember the details of your sighting, but I just wanted to say to the live listener out there right now, you can jump in our chat room if you'd like to send Sam a question or talk between yourselves, whatever. It's at podcastufo.com, right on the sidebar, 2 clicks to get in. And so Sam and I are going to be talking about UFOs in general, some Illinois and Midwestern UFO encounters over the years. And then in the second hour, what did you say we're going to do? We're going to get freaky?
We're going to talk about the freaky.
Okay. So stay tuned for that. And if you're not a subscriber, for only $1 a month, which is about 23 cents a week, you can listen to the full show if you're just listening to this part on a podcast. So, Sam, from here, would you like to talk about? I want you to tell me why you know about this buzzing sound. Did you have a similar experience?
Yes, I've had a similar experience years back when I was a child. I was having what we'd probably refer to as encounters. These beings and whatever else was out there. This is the sound I heard. This was prior to having tinnitus, and I hear it all the time, but it's a different version of the buzzing. This is more of a ringing tinnitus, but it's like whirling insects around you, and you could hear it, and it's the sound of it isn't okay. For those who have tinnitus, it's a constant buzzing sound. But imagine insects. If you ever been near a beehive or something like that, but magnified, much greater and swirling around you, where there's depth and you feel that there's motion going on. So this was going on around them. And the yiping of coyotes. During the Tinley Park case, to allude to that real quick, there was yiping. And in fact, in some of the video footage, you actually had the dogs barking. And people say, it's because there were people around. No, it wasn't because people were around. They were barking at a distance, too. And it seemed like they were all yiping and barking. And further off in the parks or some of these hollows where you have lakes and stuff, you could hear them howling, the coyotes howling. So something was getting their attention, and this was prior to these things being directly overhead where they were able to see them, the illuminations or the potentially what could possibly a massive triangle or some unusually massive object. Now, other sounds that some people were getting interference, as you recall, on the FM band on their was like a Nextel phone with radio, and they were getting interference. In fact, those Nextel phones didn't work when it came to that radio mode. Some people were actually getting some unusual chatter and talk on baby monitors. And this wasn't because they had just seen what was the movie Signs. So it's funny how movies do reflect actual things that take place in this field. So this was going on. Now, as far as the swirling sounds, no one heard that I heard. I never heard anybody mentioning it in that case. But in other cases, yes, where people were close to objects or the objects seemed to come down upon them. And many a time you hear about this very brilliant light shining down and enveloping them, whether tractor beams or whatever transpires. One thing that does take place with anything that's altering gravity, and we think that this is part of the science behind the physics behind the unidentified or the actual thing, you're going to have an effect on time. It does affect time. And the same thing with genuine crop glyphs / crop circles or whatever. You get reports of the effect of time loss or time altered. One other thing that I don't know if I ever talked to you about, the time lost seems to be regained at some point as if it's elastic, like stretching out a rubber band.
I've never heard that before.
This is kind of strange. On 3 instances, and I'll tell you 2 of them, part of the case that we'll be talking about later is what I refer to as the freaky. A gentleman who is one of the key figures in this case that I worked on for many years. He was, where was this at? He was leaving from northern Wisconsin, going to, close to Lake Superior. He was some ways off, but yet not as long as his trip actually ended up taking. It was a well plotted and known length and time as far as his journey. This guy sees a triangular UFO by the side of the road, pulls over, and watches this thing just sitting there next to a barn. It was large. It wasn't a massive one that was miles long, but one that, obviously very big, hundreds of feet. It had below the exterior and the bottom what would be like if you were to take a ping pong ball, cut it in half and place it near each corner, and have it swirling around with self-luminous iridescence or opalescence, like shampoo or something like that, an opalescence yellowish white color, but brilliant. And he says that's what it looked like. And that object sat there for some length of time. He was just, it just sat there. And he says easily he could have spent 10 minutes. Then he jumped back in his car. The thing was still there. He was just like, wow. He's trying to get as much observation. He drew it. He drew the object. Well, he gets to his point of destination, but it was some 3 hours later than was what normally have taken him. His wife had called over there, deathly afraid to see what the end result was, why he was missing. But here, all it was a loss of time. Now, was there an encounter during that period of time? Maybe, but 3 hours was lost. So, within a week or two after this experience, he lived in Minnesota at the time. He had to cut the lawn, and he had to do some other errands. His wife had to do the same. And he's out there, and he knew how long it would take. And the time element would have came out to approximately 3 hours to do everything he needed to do. And here he had everything done within a period of a half hour. So the wife and the both of them came together, and they go, wait a minute, how can this be? They looked at the time, from the time they started, and the both of them finishing their chores, and they knew how long it would have taken, and they knew when it started, and they go, no, that just can't be. And sure enough, that time that was missing for him came back, but in this instance, came back for both of them.
Wow.
Another time, a gentleman, or it was actually a woman coming from Wyoming to visit her elderly father in Dixon, Illinois, and traveling down I-88, which was at that time I-5, I believe. And coming in, she's on the road, and she notices up ahead some brilliant illuminations, and she thought it was just some sort of tower. As she's getting closer and closer, what it is not standing directly over the middle of the road, but moved off to her right into a farm field. And there was this unusual object, a UFO, with illuminations underneath it, and it was hovering directly over the ground. She pulls over. Her children are just terrified, a boy and a girl in the back seat, terrified. She gets out, and she's just staring at this and staring at it. And she says, there are cars going past me, and it's like I'm in my own world. Nobody else is paying attention. And not only are they not paying attention to the object in the field, they aren't paying attention to me. I'm waving people and pointing to this, and they're not paying attention to me, as if I'm not even there.
Wow, like a dead ghost or something.
Exactly. They get back in the car. She looks down as she takes off, and she realizes the time she had spent out there was substantially more than the time that she actually knew she was out there. She shows up at the father's house and says, why are you? And the father says, what took you so long? You called me from this junction, wherever she was in the last call, and here you are here so much later than you normally would. She tells him what she saw and whatever, but it wouldn't account for a large amount of time, something around an hour. And so she gets back to Wyoming the very next week. Very next week, she gets to go back to work. She kisses her husband in the morning, closes the door, and off she goes. She gets to work, and as always, she calls him. And as she states her point from the travel time is approximately an hour from the house to work. She calls him up. He grabs the phone, and he says, who is this? And she says, well, it's me. I'm here at work. And he goes and says, that is absolutely impossible. You just kissed me, and I could still hear the door that had slammed.
Ooh. Wow. That's freaky.
Very freaky. And
we're supposed to save the freaky stuff for hour 2.
Oh, it gets better. So there seems to be this effect of time-space by these encounters. So, and I don't think it's psychological, because apparently it's recorded in, say, for instance, even the mechanics of a clock or a watch. So there is some sort of recordable variance that even affects, mechanisms. The case of the UFO car case of Val Johnson's case back in the 80s, his car was hit by what was either an energy beam or actually some extension that was self-luminous from an object or whatever. Or even some sort of unusual natural phenomena that may very well possess a similar type of energy and let's say, residual effect. It hit the car. I'm not sure are you aware of this case?
No, unless it's the one in Australia.
No, this is the one in Minnesota.
Okay.
And Val's he was a police officer, and he was actually on a dispatch to see what was going on out there, people reporting some unusual things, or it was I think it was just a regular routine ride. And he sees this object at a distance, this illumination. Didn't know it was an object, and to this date we don't know. But whatever it has the properties to bend things and affect things, so it's able to cause some damage. This thing came right at him, and he says it felt like he was hit by a 200-pound pillow. He was knocked out. He woke up. His eyes were out of focus and painful. He says it felt as if I had welder's flash. And for those of you who've ever encountered welder's flash, it's very painful. So just thinking of it now, it hurts. And then he says, the car was sitting sideways. The windshield was damaged, but it was damaged. It was if it was imploded, like the energy pulled it out and in simultaneously. Ford, I think it was Ford Motor Company, a laboratory over there he said there was at least 800 pages of final text on the series of tests that they ran on it and other groups, and they said you could actually get the result in the laboratory but you have to do it independently, and it would take at least 2 processes, not at once and instantaneously. So whatever happened was no doubt a phenomena and something they couldn't understand. And the other thing is the physical effect of him. His eyes were burnt. His face, he had as if it looked like a second-degree burn throughout his face, an exposed area. He was red. It almost reminds you of Close Encounters. The enamel on his teeth were damaged.
Wow.
Yeah,
it takes a lot for that to happen, I would think.
Oh, sure. The enamel's one of the most, one of the strongest parts, as far as hardest parts of the body. It's the enamel of teeth. And here he has all these cracks and hairline cracks. The antenna, which was on a springed mechanism, so when it would hit something out there in the, out in Minnesota, a lot of things besides deer and birds and twigs, you're going into areas. You can lose an antenna once a week when you're going into some of these areas. So they have a spring, and I think you've seen them at the bottom, a spring mechanism, so it bends. Mm-hmm. So if anything would have hit it, it would have bent. It would have, wouldn't have damaged it. Well, there was nearly a 45-degree angle bend. It was about 38 degrees. I forget the exact amount of degrees in the antenna itself. The other interesting thing is the insect crust that was on the exterior of the antenna, where it's was just caked up bug juice that hardened, was actually molded around it as if it was superheated instead of cracked. Huh. Very unusual.
Really strange.
And then he looked at his watch, and the watch and the clock in the car were exactly the same time off. In other words, they were both the same, but off. I think it was 15 minutes or 18 minutes. I think it was 18 minutes. They both were precisely off 18 minutes. In other words, they were the same, and he always kept a correct time. That's the first thing he did. He drove off in the morning, was to check the time and have it correct in the car and on his watch before he went on his patrol. And this is one of the best physical trace cases. The car itself is in, I forget, is it Madison County Fairgrounds? Is that it?
I think I know of this case now. It took a while, but yes, I think this was actually investigated on a show
a couple of them.
Yeah,
but I think I have the only video interview with Phil Johnson. I think I'm the only person who has a video interview with him.
Now, is that online where anybody can see it?
No. In fact, hopefully I'm going to get approval after I edit it to get a right to release it in along with volumes of things that I've accumulated in the last 20 years. So, and when I do that, I'll make sure to premiere some of the excerpts from it on your show. Okay?
Oh yeah, love that. So let's see, we have about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to talk about a couple of cases. We've talked about Tinley Park, and oftentimes the O'Hare sighting comes up. But let's talk about some of the obscure ones. I was looking in some of the top Illinois encounters over the years, and how about the Franklin Park sighting? Are you familiar with that one?
I think Dr. Rodiger worked on that one. I didn't work on it all.
Okay. Well, that one's basically, it was Boy Scouts, and they saw, metallic pulsing saucer about 20 feet in diameter. That was interesting. So what are some of the other ones that you have worked on besides, Rockford? Didn't you work on that?
Yes, the Rockford mass sighting.
And that was a mass sighting, and I think there was hundreds of people that saw it, and it was orange orbs or something like that, right?
It was seen on, what it was a mass sighting that started actually on New Year's Eve of 1999. Everybody, of course, had the 2000 Millennium Concern.
Oh, yes.
About all the computers going down and everything going haywire and, oh, no, the world's going to end, all that kind of stuff.
I remember that.
Yeah, you probably have stuff stashed away somewhere from that, don't you?
No, but you know what? I don't want to get way off topic, but I knew a guy that bought a 250-gallon oil tank, put diesel in it, got the generator. He had machine guns. Oh my God, was he was pretty scary. And then, like 2 weeks later, he dropped out of a heart attack.
Oh my God!
So it didn't really help him too much.
I think it was just an excuse for him to do it. He wanted to do it anyway.
Yeah,
Not the heart attack, mind you. But all the other toys. Honey, this is a good reason. I really got to get this now. Okay, Harold, just get the darn thing.
Oh, had stores of food. He had like tons and tons of food. Was buying food for a year. And
I could see that.
Yeah.
A lot of people did that. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy, huh?
Yeah, my brother did too. In fact, funny thing we mentioned it. He was looking at the rations that he had stored away. He goes, "I'm wondering if these are any good." I go, "I don't know, but I'm not going to try it."
Oh, you mean he still has them?
Yeah, I forgot what the shelf life on some of this stuff was pretty good. He had a great. He's really good at keeping things organized that way. Me, I tell you, anything chaotic comes along, I guess I'm screwed, Anyway, you look at it. I don't know. Yeah. I'm the first one to go.
Yeah. Well,
but,
I know the place I own up on the mountain there, the people were absolutely paranoid as well. And there's a bomb shelter. There's a fire system with a water tower. I mean, and the indoor pool was hooked into it. I mean, they were ready for everything. Pretty amazing.
That's pretty kind of. I tell you what, that is kind of neat. But you have to admit, it is kind of neat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe just play crazy like that for a weekend, have a party. Who knows?
Well, there was tornado warnings last summer, and I went down into the bomb shelter, so that was kind of cool to have, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, out here, we have tornado warnings. You do want to go low because they do hit. I don't know how many tornadoes you get out in your neck of the woods, but
very rare.
Yeah. Out here, it's like Tornado Alley. We were shooting Invasion, Illinois, and I had secured a property for us to shoot at. In fact, a gentleman's a county police officer, a sergeant, and that owned the property. So we got out there. And Bill Burns, most of these guys are from the, East Coast and West Coast, and they've never seen anything like tornadoes. And we had like 3 of them that evening. They were just shooken by, just like, wow, Sam, this is, and they're going, this really is Tornado Alley. I go, yeah, it is. And I remember the sound guy putting on the, here he's listening to make sure the audio's correct, and he's got the mics. All of a sudden, this crack of lightning goes right outside, just, a couple 100 feet away, and instantaneous roar of thunder throughout the pole barn that we were in. This poor guy, the cans on his head just popped right off. He didn't have to lift them. And he's like, I'm like, oh.
That sounds good.
Yeah, we got that. That sounds perfect.
So tell me about that. Was that a series, or was that a one-time documentary, or what?
That was the first episode. In fact, you'll see it if you ever watch the repeats on the History Channel of UFO hunters. That was 2001 Invasion.
Bill Burns, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I worked on 5 episodes as a consultant, but the ones that I actually had a chance to cameo in, of course, were the ones that I was actually involved on as investigative researcher, and that would have been Tinley Park, and that's Invasion, Illinois. Aliens at the airport, that was the O'Hare case, in conjunction with other UFO cases at airports and related to aviation. And that was good. That was a very good episode. The funny thing is, it was a great show. It was starting to lose. I could see it, in the end, it was starting to lose its appeal. And they were already, I think, working on Ancient Aliens. They had that, maybe even had the pilot in the can. I don't know. They may have been already had that, And the other thing is, consider what took the time slot was Pawn Stars. My God, that is one of the best shows on television, period. I mean, what are we going into, our 7th season on that one? My God, I wish I was involved in that.
Yeah. That's rigged, by the way.
It's rigged, is right.
Yeah, I mean, I have inside news on that. That's a whole nother story. I don't want to get too far off topic.
About that.
But, yeah.
I'm assuming they have to, because people with that much interesting stuff just don't make their way into pawn shops one right after another for an episode. You'd have to sit around all day, and that's costly.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, there's sometime off air, I'll tell you that there's a real funny story about a specialist that I know that they hired, and they talked verbatim exactly like the words she wrote. It was pretty funny. But let's see, we got about 5 minutes left, and I want you to tell us a little bit about the Rockford sighting, some details on that.
The detail about the Rockford sighting, and this is a very significant mass sighting, one that just fell off the face of the earth. And it all ties in with the Southern Illinois sighting, which ties into the Tinley Park sighting. These objects that we're seeing may very well have been the large triangular objects, the same. But this happened in, like I said, going into 2000, and as you know, January 4th and January 5th of that year was the sightings down in Southern Illinois that got all the attention simply because of it was being followed and reported by police officers. Strangely enough, up in Rockford, we had not just hundreds of witnesses, but thousands of witnesses on multiple nights. There was as many as 13 nights of mass sightings, 9 of which that we feel have merit, and at least 5 of those genuine. There were photographs taken. These photographs are relatively similar to other craft that have been recorded, and there is videotape. Again, you have these illuminations in the sky, you have orange orbs, and they're not conventional aircraft. The other thing was, during this sighting, we had other sightings going on in the Midwest, out in the Quad Cities, and all over the world, even on the island of Man. So that night was pretty active all over the world. What the heck was going on? I have no idea. But apparently, maybe they got the bug too, like, oh no, our computers are going to go down. We're going to crash. I don't know. Either way, things were going on that could not be accountable as conventional or Chinese lanterns or flares on balloons, all that malarkey. Though I think at least 3 of those were hoaxes later on. But during that whole episode, we had a meeting, at a Borders, I think it was Borders bookstore. We had 80-some people show up. The press was there, and it got to the point we couldn't even get enough people, accommodate the people that were there. It was just crazy. And when they were there, people were telling us stories of accounts that had nothing to do with this, how for years they had sightings out there. And little did I know, but the history of UFO sightings on the borderline area, in the Rockford area, Rockdale, now all this area, they go way back. They go back well before 1947, though. 1947 was a peak year, too. But some farmers, these old farmers in their 80s, were telling us of accounts that they seen things in their land in their fields. And they knew about their parents talking about things landing in the fields and flying around that were UFOs, flying saucers, whatever you want to call them. So this was a hot area that's ignored by most people because, of course, it's Illinois. And if you're within, a mile or 2 of a farm and fleet or some farm implement store, of course, you're just wacky. That's the attitude some of these people take. And what I find interesting similar events took place, of course, in Jersey, soon thereafter in Newark in July, and the Carteret sightings. You may have heard about the mass sightings of Carteret. This is the same thing that went on during that same period of time. But yet that got credence. This didn't get as much. But yet, further south, when the police officers saw him, just a day later or 4 days later, it became big news. And, of course, Discovery Channel did a special on it. Daryl Barker did a very good documentary and still does, finding more witnesses to this case down there in southern Illinois.
Wow. All right. Well, Sam, that's the first hour. So, again, we're going into the kind of the freaky, weird stuff in hour 2. And why don't you say goodbye to the hour 1 listeners, if you would?
Well, hour 1 listeners, tell you what, buy your next hour because it's going to be well worth it, and thank you for listening either way.
Thank you, Sam. All right, so we're just going to take a quick little music break, and we'll be right back. All right, we're here in hour 2 with Sam Maranto. If you're listening live, you can jump into the chat room. I'm not real active on the chat room today. I'm having a little trouble with that particular computer staying online. So, but anyway, I will check back on the chat room. If you're in there, you can certainly send a message out. All right, so Sam, we were talking about basically, UFO encounters in Illinois, which to me is kind of fascinating. And I wanted to just address something you just said. You're saying that, like the farmer or anyone near a silo or whatever isn't really taken seriously. To me, in my experience, farmers are one of the least ones that would come up with a bizarre story like that.
And for good reason. They're already walking around with a stigma on them, and yet we are the recipients of their produce. We eat it. I find that unusual. It's like complaining about giving grief to the waiter, or I would never give a waiter any grief. They're handling my food, or a cook.
Yeah.
That's just the wrong thing to do. If you're going to do it after you leave or you're about to walk out the door and expect to never come back again. These are some of the most intelligent people I've ever met, are the farmers out here. First of all, to be a farmer today, you have to use some pretty scientific methods. And these are people that survived and made their way. And even the old-timers, these are not idiots. And they think twice about mentioning things. They say a lot of things, and they're very guarded on who they talk to. As you know, in this field, the most important thing is to get some degree of, credence and trust. It's important. If you can't get beyond that, you're never going to get people to open up to you. And the other thing that you'll find out is when you start working on a case, especially a mass sighting, people reveal information only to the degree that they feel you need that information or worthy of it, or it won't harm them. So what I find over time is people will give more information as you gain a closer relationship with them, or they feel comfortable and their guard's down, or maybe in the case, and this is the benefit of a mass sighting, is that so many people seen something that first of all they're going to agree to the fact that they've seen something, but they may qualify it differently, and that's fine. But as time progresses, if they've experienced something else, they may pull you aside once they're comfortable with you and tell you about what they really saw. And that's where it does get freaky.
And we promised we were going to be talking about freaky.
Oh, yes, we did promise, and I think we'll fulfill that. The Tinley Park sightings, though, it seems like something, it's just like three lights in the sky. And I recall doing the Dateline NBC their special on the 10 best UFO encounters, and I remember we shot that up at I forgot what studio it was in Manhattan. Sitting there for I don't know how long in the hot seat, and Mike Nardi was the producer, and he's asking all these questions, and each question seemed to get closer and closer to what they really wanted to hear, and they wanted to hear me say extraterrestrial. I don't use the E word much, as you know, and I don't like to qualify something when it's under investigation, and I could tell you what it isn't, but I don't like to throw a definitive anything unless I know for certain what it is. And I could tell you the case itself, after all these years looking at it, reviewing it, I think one of the most telling aspects of it is the feedback from the social response, be it the, let's say, the officials, or how the media, when they grab it, how they spin it right away, or the repercussions I get. And I've gotten some truly negative repercussions. And I can't put my finger on what individuals, agencies, or crackpots, or a combination thereof, are responsible for some of these things. But all I can tell you is, when I get into this subject publicly out here in the area, it is not well received. It's well received by the individuals, but it's not well received by certain, again, crackpots, individuals, or groups, be it agencies or whatever. Mm-hmm. There are always repercussions. But I'm going to tell you some of the freaky that happened with the Tinley Park case. Again, I think I alluded to the walkie-talkie. That was kind of odd.
I don't recall that. Was that something you said this evening?
Yeah, it was the not the walkie-talkie, but the radio communications on the Nextel phones.
Oh yes.
Okay. Now the second sighting, what happened, Martin, was that these radio communications didn't work when the object was near. And on the 31st, here on Halloween, people are going about doing many different things, of course, doing all sorts of stuff. These two girls in particular went to the show, and they were the ones that also had experienced the Nextel phones not working. They left the show, went outside, got in the car, and they tried calling their husbands using the Nextel radio phones, the communication. And they didn't work. And what came out of their mouth was, would it be funny if the UFO was here again? Little did they know, yes, it was. And they didn't get a chance to see it until they got home. But it was just, how odd is that? Well, it gets even odder still. On the 31st, that Halloween sighting, people were seeing a myriad of objects. It wasn't just the one triangular formation of three red illuminations in the sky. They were seeing objects coming in and out. They were seeing the large orange orbs. One gentleman was talking to his son-in-law on the other side of town, 5 miles away. And he's calling him up. He says, yeah, it's directly overhead. I can see it. He goes, no, it isn't. It's right here. I could see it. It's right here. What he was seeing was the large orange orbs. And I don't know why or what purpose, but they seem to be associated with these large triangular craft. They come in and out, attach, detach, whatever. This thing came down towards the house. Him and his wife ran outside, had the camera, and they're trying to take pictures with this. Time and time again, when these things come close, electronics don't work, certain mechanical things will not work, and of course, there's distortion of time, space. This thing gets closer to him, and as he described it, this man came right up to my face within inches, screaming. He says, Sam, this thing was as big as my house, as big as my house. His wife was standing there shaking her head. Yes, this thing was massive. And he says, you know what else? Our camera didn't work. And then we went inside the house. We were looking for one of our dogs, the smaller dog, and that dog was nowhere to be seen. They have a 2-level home, and you were able to see the hallway from one vantage point in the foyer. When they walked back to the foyer, they're looking all over. They were upstairs. They looked under all the beds and every place imaginable. Calmed the dog. They went downstairs, they joined together, and they turned around and looked. Standing in the middle of the hall was this dog just shivering. They went up there and grabbed the dog to see what was wrong with it, and it was like frozen, completely so cold, it was cold to the touch. Huh. And they says, we couldn't figure out what happened to it to be this cold. I was working on this case. I was working on another case out in Arizona, and this gentleman had a dog, too. Funny thing was, he always said the dog was afraid of the objects, things that were looming about the house, and part of his own research. He was a very good researcher.
Can I interrupt you for a second, Sam?
Sure.
I was unaware that you did any investigations in other areas, so you actually do in different states?
Sure. Yes.
Now, why am I thinking that you only did Illinois?
Because it's Illinois MUFON, and I'm the state director. But considering that, I started doing this a long time ago, so I do other research other places.
Okay.
And if
sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's fine. Now, I've worked on cases in other places. Though there's enough going on right here that I didn't have to, but it all dovetailed into other. Some of the research was going on at the same time. This was all in 2004, the year of the weird. So at the time, I was looking to see if by chance I was working on an idea, a premise that, is there a reason why there seems to be more activity in certain areas? Again, that there's been books written, papers written on trying to find a common denominator for areas that have higher incidence of activity. Not so much sightings per se, but genuine activity, well-documented, recorded activity. And I was thinking geology. Is there a higher concentration of quartz and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. So in other words, part of what I was doing... Yeah, I was concerned. I was looking to see if there's trying to find some sort of pattern that may be related to a substrate. In other words, let's say you have an area that's more conducive for a phenomena to be witnessed, by our senses because of the substrate, because of the geology, quartz or whatever. In other words, there's something else there making it more, making it easier for our senses to perceive it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So and it's still a premise, it's still something that I'd like to finish working on. I don't know if it's valid, but it may be, in some instances. We know how areas of quartz, of course, seem to have some other properties to it, and it was quartz itself. So I was thinking, well, maybe that's the case. Higher incidence, higher amounts of quartz in the soil, blah, blah, blah. And it seems to be the case, it could be just by chance or coincidence, that the case up in Wisconsin is much like with phenomena very similar to the Skinwalker Ranch, which I think a lot of people know the Skinwalker story. I think you may have even had some people on talking about that.
Yeah, I've talked about it enough, and have tried to get George Knapp on. He almost was on one time, but couldn't quite make it for a schedule. But that is an really interesting case.
It's a great case. Here's a location, and the funny thing is, in 2007, we were both speaking at the MUFON Symposium. That was the last time I was out doing anything. I don't know, a couple times after I did a few things. But I told him, I says, what you're talking about, we actually have on video. He goes, what? I go, yeah, you're talking about the creature or whatever thing is moving about looking like Predator. I've actually seen that on video because my witness, or the subject of the investigation, one of the subjects being the person themselves, actually took video of this. And so when you hear things about predator-looking things, oh no, it's actually recorded. And I remember reviewing some 12 hours of footage 2 nights. And when we seen that take place, we had a room full of people, and all of us at once seen it. We didn't have to be, no one had to point it out. It was stinking obvious, right there, in your face. And it's like, oh my God.
Now, when you're saying you're reviewing video, is it you're just sitting there watching video, waiting for something to happen?
Yes, because it wasn't
boring.
cute. Boring? Oh, yeah, when you only have a few minutes of anything that's really worthwhile, and the guy didn't cue anything. I go, well, I don't want it cued. Let me see if I want to see everything, see if there's any flaw, if it's the camera doing this, if it's just, But no, I watched the whole darn thing. And I still have, I don't even know how many more to go through, but we pinpointed exactly what he was talking about. What he would do is he would just leave the camera run, leave it run, let it sit and run, and have nothing to do with it. I would tell him, no interaction with the environment or the camera, just set it up, let it run. And he would do that. And he was very good. After a while, he got to be quite the researcher himself, Ed was very proactive in getting a lot of the information. He went crazy for a while. I told him, I says, at some point, you are going to hate me. And he couldn't understand why. What I found out is a lot of people who are real close to the phenomena, where it's actually happening to them, for some reason, somehow, some way, they corrupt the case. They just compromise either the data, they lose it, they goof it up, they misrepresent what's actually there, or all of a sudden everything is a phenomena, everything's a cryptid, everything's a UFO, everything's something unusual. And it isn't the case.
Can we talk a little bit more on this subject, because this is something that fascinates me, because I've noticed this as well, is that this seems to happen sometimes, and what I have wondered, or ponder, if the fact that they're real vested in this particular case they're working on. It's their baby, their only child, and what they're known for in the UFO field, and either evidence comes up that shows that some part of their research was wrong, and they completely put blinders to it, or they're very protective of it, or they just go off the deep end because it has to be more spectacular than it is in order to get news again. Is this along the lines of similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar along the lines, except that it's the actual witness themselves, or the subject. When I have a case, the person themselves, not so much the phenomena. A lot of what I want to research is the social response of psychology, what's going on there with the individual, the family, everybody that is part of the events. How is it affecting them? What is the cause and effect here of what's going on? Is there an interaction? In other words, can they be affecting it in some way? I think the phenomena is far deeper than just little men or little people, and that may be part of the reasoning of it being such a taboo thing in our society. So, but as far as people who do the investigative work and feel they have their case is so perfect and they covet it and it has to be this and it's this way and they're they won't take criticism or I see it. It happens, and the subject matter is spectacular enough that you don't have to trump it. Everybody's looking for the one case to trump the next case. The bottom line is we all have to start from the same place, and the same place is to qualify it as being genuine. A sighting is just a story until there's evidence to support it. And this is what bothers me, and it probably gets a lot of people in the field very angry with me because, as you know, I'm not exactly a regular guy in the field. I like the scientific. I like to have the case go as far. Let the information go as far as the evidence. From there, it's beyond that, it's speculation and it's a story. That's fine. It's great to talk about. You could talk about the person's perception, the story, but don't qualify it to anything more than that. It isn't evidence. When it comes to science, science demands evidence, not proof. Proof, again, is only in math and alcohol. And this is where people really don't understand the distinction. There is never proof in science. It's just evidence that evolves and hopefully get some sort of hypotheses. And again, it's an extraterrestrial hypothesis, not proof. And, we never followed one of these things back home, met its mom, and sat down for chili. So this is where we got to understand things, and we have to put things into some logical context. And you're right on the money when it comes to, holding anything sacred. Again, any case that I've worked on, show me the evidence. If it's contrary to what I've seen, and for good reason, I'm the first. I want to be the first one to say what it is. And that's what I'm looking for, what it is first, not what it's not.
Right. I just had a thought, and it just escaped me because it's along these lines. And, a thing I mentioned a couple times lately is, we don't have an answer to what these things are. And it's very possible that we haven't even thought of what they are at all. We were discussing earlier in hour one, about the time distortion. And it got me thinking about what if most of what, people are seeing and experiencing all has to do with a time situation that, again, we can't even perceive yet. When you're talking about time, people losing time and then gaining it back, it just made me think of, maybe this is even deeper than, we could even imagine. And maybe a lot of it has to do with time, or like you say, a lot of it distorts time. But what is all that about? It's really fascinating.
That, I think, lies at the crux of the real scary stuff, the truly freaky. And when you get into this phenomena, you find out that it dovetails to other things. Call them Sasquatch. You call it about these, these cryptids, the Skinwalker Ranch, these dimensional, what appears to be, all of a sudden you're looking and there's this rip or a tear or a dimensional something. Something's walking in as if it just ripped open a piece of fabric that's the backdrop to what you were looking at and you thought was there. Now, what does that? How does that happen? And then pops in, pops out. And you see things that are, say, for instance, the large wolves that we're seeing that were prehistoric wolves, more than likely. They're shooting at it, not affecting it. Yet, it's there. It grabbed the calf and darn near killed it. So, I mean, you have all these unusual things that look like dinosaur cryptid things. Up at the Wisconsin case, the gentleman described, and we have it on video. We have pictures of these things that look like iridescent, translucent. He describes them as algae eaters. What do you call them?
Yes, Placos.
Yes. Now imagine one of those crawling or slithering up a tree, and he says they eat the deer because the deer go berserk when these things are nearby. And you could see that the oozing from what appeared to be gills or some sort of breathing device, a self-luminous pocket or inflated area below the eye and where it would be near a throat area, throat thorax, whatever. And it's self-illuminating. Now, what is this? A breeding, translucent? Then he's talking about dragons, seeing things that look like dragons. Well, what it comes down to is myth, whatever. What's the difference between that and a story today? I don't think there's anything different, except back then, I think people were able to, years back, they were able to accept these things because everybody saw them. Mm-hmm. If everybody saw them, dragons weren't something that were make-believe. They were in the textbooks. It wasn't a story of legends. It was a fact. They were making this stuff up. They were killing these things because they were there. And apparently, some variation of them may be alive today in other places. Do they have some correlation with UFOs and all this other stuff? I think yes. And are there certain places that, for one reason, be it the geology or whatever, somehow like a television set, then you walk to this place, it's turned on for you, or something about you triggers the environment and it displays itself to you.
Mm-hmm. Since this is the freaky hour, I also think, this is a show about UFOs and et cetera, but, there's people that report ghosts. There's people that report, cryptoid, like you're talking about. There's people that report all these things in a similar area, and that really is a wonder, And, I know some pretty credible people that have told quite amazing ghost stories that, again, are like you shake your head and say, wow, if that's true, what would be the answer to that?
Right. Is there a common denominator? I think so. I think the veil, whatever it is, dimensional veil, and during this, the one up in Wisconsin, some of the photographs that I've looked at, enhanced, and worked on from the Arizona case seems to indicate there is such a thing as a veil, a dimensional veil, and I personally think it had been recorded in some instances. And what I would find very unusual between the two cases is the fact that, first of all, both individuals had what appears to be implants or growths in their eyes at the exactly placed or grown, if they were grown, next to their iris. And it would have been at the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Both were very obvious when exposed to black light. And I recall in both instances telling the subjects to go into the room and take a black light and turn it on, and just look over themselves and tell me what you see. And I asked that the wife and the daughter of the gentleman in Wisconsin do the same. The wife go in there and see if there's anything unusual to the child or, well, whatever. Nothing. Those two came out clean. He, on the other hand, went over himself, nothing on his body, and then he glared up into the mirror and just freaked out when he's seeing these glowing green things in his eyes, exactly the same spots on both eyes. Well, the funny thing is, the gentleman down in Arizona who was explaining what he was saying the same thing as the gentleman in Wisconsin, had these illuminated, these glowing things, be it implants or whatever you want to call them, or maybe they just grew naturally. I don't know. But they were there. Same thing. So what's the odds of that? And they were looked at. These things were not natural. They were anomalies, no doubt. And they didn't really want to. Nobody really wanted to go beyond that. The other thing is they weren't too excited about to have them things removed. I had one of my investigators go up there. He's a very intelligent man. He was a professor out here at one of the universities. His background is electronics and computers. Goes out there. He was all excited to get up there. Many hours away. He gets up there. I was down in Arkansas working on something else. And he gets up there and he calls me and he says, "Sam, this place is just unusual." And he looked at the guy's eyes, he said, and he drew what he's seen. He had these, he said there were tenules moving, they seemed to be moving out from the, the object itself. And it seemed to have been more defined lines and structure to it than what he's seen just maybe a few weeks afterwards. He felt that something had grown over it. It had become, taken into the eye, and now it's part of the eye.
That's
and
pretty gross.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't rejecting it. It became part of it. Well, what the weird thing is, they were able to see part of the infrared or ultraviolet better than you or I afterwards, and they were seeing things that I could not see, and they would even look at photos. "Well, can't you see this?" And I'm like, "No, I can't." And this isn't the first time I heard that, but I've never had a case where two people exactly at the same time seeing unusual stuff, but at two different places in the country, one being up Wisconsin, one being down in Arizona. So seeing the same phenomena, seeing the same stuff. But the funny thing is, each of them having a different description on what they were explaining, each of them having their own lexicon of words to use, and trying to figure out what both of them were talking about. They both knew. I couldn't figure it out, and it just took time.
Wow. Since this is the Freaky Hour, I have to. I'm going to tell you about a dream that Natalia here, the listeners would know her. She was a person helping out with a contest a couple of times here. Russian, my girlfriend here. She had a dream last night. Now, she's not really into UFOs or anything like that, but she had a dream last night that that aliens came to visit her, and they were here for one thing, this world that is, and that was for coffee. and she doesn't drink coffee, by the way. And they said,
my.
Yep. And they said to her that if she was able to get them, a large amount of coffee, that they would tell her anything she needed to know, and they were going to take her home. And she said she wanted to go home. So that's another freaky story.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. You can't make that stuff up. Now,
no,
we have I'm having trouble again with the chat room, and I apologize for that. I'm having trouble with internet, Wi-Fi internet. This the Skype part that we're recording here is on a hard line, so there's no problem with that. But there is a question that came up. Do you have any information about green fireballs? Have you ever looked into that subject at all?
I got a chill up my spine because it was one of the freaky I was going to talk about.
Whoa. That was Lee asked that on the message board.
Well, dude, you freaked me out. Okay, we're reviewing a buddy of mine, and we're looking at, he wanted to see the footage from Tinley Park, and he came over. I was working on something else for him, and he's sitting there. We're watching the Tinley Park footage. I lived in, at that time, in a condo in Orland Park. And we're watching this, and right after TJ starts screaming, there, he goes, I got it on tape. Right at that point, a green fireball flew over the house. I'm talking so bright it lit up the inside of the house, and it was reported on the news, but it flew directly over us in a southwesterly direction. And it glowed. I mean, the whole area was just lit up. And it happened at the same time TJ was screaming, I got it on tape. We both jumped up. He goes, what is that? I go, man, I don't know. I went out there. I go, that's a green fireball. He goes, I think it was a UFO. We got to follow it. I go, that is gone. Whatever it was, it's gone. Sure enough, it was a green fireball. But the green fireballs have been associated as being potentially something other than just meteorites. The Los Alamos case of years back in the 50s, there was many sightings. We've had many sightings of the green fireballs. I don't think it was an accident that this thing flew directly over. If it did at that time, I would just be very surprised. Nothing was recovered on this very brilliant green fireball that flew over. So you could actually look that up. I'm trying to think of when that was, maybe like 2005 or 6. It was reported.
Now, I could see why, say, a fireball would have, different colors, like to say if it was a meteor, because of the different chemical compounds that are burning up, in the atmosphere, could come up with different colors. But
oh, definitely.
But green certainly is unusual.
It's unusual. You know me, I'll always stick with the prosaic first, unless there's anything else could say anyways, said that there's something else different. But you can't just, unless you have evidence to say, yeah, it's definitively something prosaic. You have to take that into consideration too. Consciousness, does consciousness have an interplay with the unidentified flying objects? I say yes, and I'll tell you why. Many a time I've done a couple experiences or a couple experiments with that. One had to do with water, the properties of water, and to think about something and, whatever. The whole notion of wishing wells and everything else. Do I give any credence to this? I don't know. But the same token, I tried it. Earlier in the day, I was at a client's house. There's a pond. And I'm out there, and he says, man, I haven't had a good UFO case. And I kept on thinking about this. Could be 100% I'm being very speculative on this. That evening, which was, I think, the 3rd or the 2nd of May, 2003, we were on LaGrange Road and 159th Street. And Julie goes, look, in the sky, what is that? Perfectly clear night. Beautiful night. My eyes were tired. I go, Julie, that's Walgreens. She goes, no, in the sky. So I look up there. I had to look underneath the visor, look up. There's this huge, orange, beautiful orb sitting in the sky. I go, oh, my God. An orange orb is like nothing you've ever seen. It doesn't look like a Chinese lantern, a flare on a balloon, or a balloon at all, especially when it's sitting in a 23-mile-an-hour wind and it's completely static. This thing's sitting there as if you painted it in the sky. And orange, like God, like a sunset orange. Man, I tell you, there's nothing like it. And you know there's no variation whatsoever in the coloration. None. It's exactly the same all the way around. If there's any variation, it's at the extremities, and it would probably have to do with atmospheric, as far as what you're seeing. But oozing from the bottom were these smaller droplets, is what it appeared like, of the same color. But photons could play some games with your eyes. If you have an orb, let's say, coming out of the bottom or whatever, and it's illuminated, it's going to look as though it's ripping away from it. And that's what it looked like. And there was these things coming out from the bottom. We watched it. We were at the slide, and all of us, it sat there. I don't know how long, but we watched it for 7 minutes. It had to sit there for, 30 seconds or more, and it took off. It just slowly gained altitude, and it just went off in a south by southwesterly direction. Julie and I followed it for 7 minutes, and as it was moving and going along, the coloration changed, which I found interesting. At a certain distance, it was changing. It went from the orange to a goldish to a yellow to like a blue and then to a white at a distance. And then it was gone.
To me, that says different temperatures.
Could be temperature, could be atmospheric, the effect of the wavelength. Could be, I don't know. And temperature is always, of course, wavelength. I don't know. But the thing is, that's how I'm perceiving it, how we're seeing it. And I'm telling Julie, I'm driving, tell me the colors while we're going along. Tell me if there's any variation. And she's telling me it's this, it's that. And, and we're following for 7 minutes. It was great. The next day, I came home that night, and I called the non-emergency number for the dispatch in that area. Police dispatch, and I told him, I says, did you receive any reports pertaining to this large orange orb? I'm a UFO researcher, and the guy starts laughing. I go, no, I'm serious, And he goes, no, nothing came in. And that was at, I don't know, maybe at 10 o'clock or something. Later that night, before midnight, I had gotten a call. It was the same person. And they said, it says, Mr. Maranto, what you saw was children with balloons. First of all, he's reading a script. Children with balloons. I go, no, these were not balloons. And I don't know children with some, with a budget to assemble something like this and do what that thing did. And he goes, well, it's children with balloons. I go, who told you to tell me that? And he goes, I can't tell you.
Oh, jeez.
The next day, the gentleman, one of the guys one of my neighbors, his son was a auxiliary police officer in the area, and he gave me the scoop, and he said it was pretty crazy that night. Things were taken, documents were taken, pages of the logbook were taken out, on and on and on and on. So something happened, and that was a genuine sighting with multiple witnesses, which I found out later, and that was prior to the Tinley Park sighting, but right in the area. Orland Park, Tinley Park, right next to each other.
Wow. When you're driving like that, the one thing I think of is, you're talking earlier in the first hour about the woman that got out of the car and was waving her arms and pointing. That's kind of what I think I would do, is try to pull over and, if you see something like that. But you're on chase, you chase this thing for, you said like 7 minutes or something like that. You hear police officers doing that. And, I guess out of curiosity, I would probably do that, although there's a fear level in there as well, too, not to get too close. Do you ever think along those lines?
All the time. Yeah. on cases, everybody thinks, oh, I want to go up to it and I want them to take me. I want them to. Really? No, that's like called stupid. First of all,
that's Travis Walton stupid.
Yeah, Travis Walton.
Sorry,
stupid. Yeah,
Travis. I like
no,
Travis.
he'll be the first one to tell you that too.
He would.
I wouldn't do that again. He would be the first one. But thank God he did, and he lives to tell about it because it's very interesting. And he's not playing games. The man's genuine as could be.
I agree.
From my own personal experience, you get excited about this stuff. But when it gets to the point where it just scares the living bejesus out of you, and it's involved in your life, up front and personal, you can't hide from it. So I think that's another element to this, is the fear factor is genuine. And I think that goes at every level of fear, as far as that goes.
And one thing I don't think you and I have ever talked about is the abduction phenomena. A lot of what I have thought in the past, I've been kind of on the fence. Last week we had a woman on named Christina Knowles. She was very articulate and bright, and considers herself an experiencer. Very convincing. It's a tough pill to swallow for me that all these millions of people, or hundreds of thousands, are actually getting abducted and let go and repeatedly for some reason. But I'm not discounting it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's just it's a bizarre situation. If so, it doesn't make any sense. But what does make sense in this whole field?
And I think that's it. What does make sense? If we had, again, I keep probably running this into the ground, if we had some clue as to what we are, why we are, I think all of this would dovetail in like the meshing of gears, and the phenomena, what we call phenomena, would just be, so what? It's just this. But it has to do with us. This whole everything has to do with us, not with whatever it is. It has to do with us, because that's where reality starts for everything. This journey, regardless how many of us experience this journey, call it life, call it whatever you want. It's our journey.
Our human existence.
Yes, our human whatever. Whatever is human.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things I always question is, I just think, when they say, the human species is only, a few million years old or something like that, I think they're wrong, and I...
Oh, yeah. Ask Michael Cremo about that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that we're way too developed to be just that short a time. I know that's a long time and a lot of generations and all that, but still, I just think for evolving into what we've evolved in just a few short million years, I think, it's hard to conceive what that type of time is anyway, but still, it's questionable. It's all questionable. And this is the freaky hour.
It is the freaky hour. I mean, you stop and think about, well, how could this all, and now we're talking about UFOs and you talk about this, this all comes together. There is no, the line goes here, and there is no line. Folks, there is no line. All this stuff, all the allergies, all the things that go on in your mind, all this stuff comes together. What happens is when you get into this field of, call it ufology, call it whatever you want, and any element that brings your brain to a point that you come to realize that you really need to shake yourself free of beliefs, that you shouldn't take a notion and hang it up on something and say, yes, that's it, and nothing more. Well, that's the day your brain just died, and you just got rid of anything that is at the crux of what we want to say human. Because I think part of the human experience is experience. Let's look at this. Let's analyze it. I don't know what it is. I don't even know if we need to give it a name, but it's there. And, that rabbit hole is a lot longer and wider than we dare want to run down. But, for those of us who made it a point to do so, my God, what an eye-opener. The world is not what we think it is. I mean, just as a matter of fact, matter isn't what we think it is. So if we are dealing with beings or an intelligence or a consciousness that's vessel, that it's been vessel, be it by evolution or whatever that they're possessing, be it a body or whatever, has a different composition as far as abilities. I mean, just look at our own planet. Look at a squid. Look what a squid could do with its colors. It's a living neon sign. We can't do that. And what an octopus could do. These are beings right here on our planet that are as foreign to us, as alien us, to anything that could be sitting out there trillions of miles away, and it's right here. Mm-hmm. Heck, we eat the darn things, but we can't appreciate their alien. They're so unusual and beautiful abilities and intelligence. My God. But it's right here. We know more about the moon than we know what's going on in
the ocean.
The ocean. Mm-hmm. And we get UFO cases, the unidentified submergible objects. We just had one. Just recently, a trucker called in one from southern Illinois where he's seen this object, this UFO going to Ren Lake. Well, we've had a lot of cases like that. We've had huge triangles come out of Lake Michigan.
Now, what was the size of the lake and with this recent report?
Ren Lake's a big lake. It's a impoundment. It's one of those where they blocked off, made a dam and blocked off an area. You look it up. Ren Lake's pretty big. Again, it's a story. But it's interesting and everything's credible to the point of a story. And you can't go beyond that. But give me some evidence on it. The other thing is, we've had other accounts in that area of similar things. These people have come forward. A good percentage of them are just full of it. But then there's another huge percentage of them that is just as genuine as the most genuine people you could ever meet. And they have no reason to lie. They're telling you what they saw. Is it a misperception? Could be. Who knows? But the thing is, I've had a lot of people say the same thing. So when you have multiple people say the same thing, maybe there's some credence to it. Either way, it's a darn good story, and to ignore it would be foolish.
Yeah. I was always fascinated by what was it, Sweden, where the cigar-shaped vessels around 1946, I think it was.
The ghost rockets. Yeah,
the ghost rockets. They all smashed into lakes or dropped into lakes. Another bizarre thing that, no one has any clue to what it is.
And again, there's a book out now that has some explanation to it, but I haven't read it, and I don't know. The whole notion of Russian experiments, and I just don't buy it.
How did they find lakes? I mean, they all went into lakes.
Yeah, how about it? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And the other thing is, the Great Lakes, for instance, not too long ago, maybe about 8 years ago, all of a sudden, satellite images were showing unusual, perfect circular impressions in the bottom of Lake Superior. And they're trying to figure out, what are these things?
You mean like craters, possibly, or something?
Not sure, but there were some perfectly round impressions or holes in Lake Superior. So to think that it's beyond the possibility of there being portals to underground or, be it underground or whatever bases, water, I think, is a perfect place to hide, entries into something subterranean or just to have bases underwater. Heck, these things have no problem moving through water. And apparently some may even have the ability to transverse material such as rocks, and you don't know. I mean, they may have a better understanding of a way to dematerialize or a different. I don't know. You know, the whole thing is, what are we dealing with? And what we're dealing is a multiplicity of phenomena and possible explanations. It isn't one thing that fits all. It isn't, it isn't a Swiss Army knife either. I think it's things beyond things that could be just quite simply vessels, things that could be advanced technologies from other places, other beings, some that live here, some that share this planet, this place, this time, this space, or some variation of it. Then, of course, there are things that may be so outside the possibility of even comprehending by the human intelligence. Anyway, I don't care if you have a 500 IQ. It's just outside the scope of the realm of human. That it just can only be put into category of other, and that's fine. Why not, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We only have like a couple minutes left here. Something like 2 minutes or so. Sam, you don't. I don't believe you have a website, do you?
No, not. I'm working on it. I have the UFO guy, by the way. I've only been working on it for how many years, right? Since ages.
Before websites.
Yeah. I have the UFO guy. I got the UFO sleuth. I've got like 37 domains. It's like I got nothing to do at time. It's like, that sounds good. I got to get a domain for that, Really? Come on, Sam. What are you going to do with these things? Julie's going to beat you to death with them. That's what she's going to do.
Well, can someone reach you out there through any type of website?
Absolutely. You could contact me at sjmaranto at comcast.net. sjmaranto at comcast.net. And, I did get a Skype phone number that I'm going to eventually give to you so people can just call and leave a message on there, too.
Now, do you actually take reports yourself?
Yes. I take reports if they're outside the area. If people don't, for some reason, I don't know why, don't want to give it to MUFON, or if it's too spooky, or they're afraid of their anonymity. People remain anonymous. Go to the MUFON site and report it. If you want something directly to me, and for one reason or another, if you're with another organization, agency, or whatever, and you want me to look at it, that's fine. Police department, whatever. If you're afraid to give it to any group per se, and you just want a person to look at it, fine. And they're welcome to give me a call, shoot me an email.
All right, Sam, that's going to be it for us today. Sorry, we have to cut off for another show coming up live. And thank you very much for being on the show, and I have a couple of other people to thank. Alejandro Rojas for the UFO news. Then after that, I'd like to thank Keith Rowland for producing the Dark Matter Radio Network. Peggy Shunning for the Facebook page. And if you like us on Facebook, about 20,000 people or so have, you'll get all the latest UFO news. Peggy does a great job with that. And I also want to thank Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse and Bruce Raniere for the music. And I also want to thank you, the subscriber, because if you're listening now, that means you're subscribing to Get Joyride and helping us out. And I want to say I really, really appreciate that. It helps with all the expenses of the show. Well, that's it for this week, and we'll see you here next week right here on the Dark Matter Radio Network, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember to keep your eyes to the sky.